Chosen one, they called your silence weakness. Tonight, that same silence is the reason strangers are warning each other never to test you. Funny how fast the story flipped. They expected you to explain yourself. You didn't. They expected you to defend every rumor, chase down every lie, beg for the record to be corrected. You just stopped talking, and that quiet, the one they laughed at, the one they called weak, the one they said proved you had nothing to say, that quiet just became the loudest thing in the room. Because while they were busy talking, you were watching. While they were busy performing, you were remembering. And now, chosen one, the same people who once called your silence pathetic are quietly telling other people, don't push them, you don't know what they're capable of. That's not a compliment, that's a confession. That's what fear sounds like when it tries to disguise itself as caution. Think about that for a second, chosen one. A weapon doesn't have to be loud to be dangerous. A weapon just has to be effective at exactly the moment it's needed. Guns don't talk before they matter. Locked doors don't announce themselves before they stop someone in their tracks. Your silence worked the same way. It sat there, unassuming, easy to underestimate, right up until the moment it mattered, and then it did more damage than any argument you could have thrown at them in the heat of the moment ever would have. You didn't raise your voice once. You didn't post the receipts. You didn't drag anyone's name through anything. You just went quiet and stayed quiet, long enough for the truth to do what it always does when nobody's rushing it. It finished the job on its own. Now watch them. Watch how careful they've gotten. Watch how they choose their words differently when your name comes up. Watch how the same mouths that used to run wild about you now lower their voice like they're talking about something dangerous. Because chosen one, that's exactly what they think you are now. Not loud, not aggressive, dangerous. And the wildest part? You didn't do anything to earn that fear, except refuse to explain yourself to people who never deserved an explanation in the first place. Before we go further, chosen one, hit that like button and subscribe. Not because I'm asking for a favor, but because that's how this message finds the next person who needs to hear it before they give up and start explaining themselves to people who never earned it. Consider it payment back into whatever force keeps putting these words in front of the right eyes at the right time. Now let's talk about what actually happened, because most people are never taught this. Silence isn't empty. Silence is a container, and what you put inside it decides everything. Some people go quiet because they've given up. Their silence sounds like surrender, feels like defeat, reads like guilt to anyone watching. But your silence was never that. Your silence was full of everything you noticed and never said out loud, full of every name you remembered when nobody thought you were paying attention, full of every moment you chose not to react because reacting was exactly what they wanted from you. That's the part they never understood. They wanted a reaction. A reaction is easy to twist. A reaction gives them a story. Tears give them a headline. Anger gives them a villain. But silence? Silence gives them nothing to work with. So they filled that empty space with their own noise, their own theories, their own guesses about what you were thinking. And every single guess was wrong, because they were trying to read a language they never learned. They mistook your discipline for damage. They mistook your patience for defeat. That misread is the whole reason we're here tonight, chosen one. Because that misread is what's about to cost them everything they thought they got away with. And here's something worth sitting with before we go further. This isn't about becoming cold, or cutting people off, or treating every person in your life like a suspect. That's not what this is. This is about understanding that you get to choose when and how you respond to people, and that choice, calm, deliberate, unhurried, is yours to make every single time, no matter how loud anyone else gets. The people who genuinely love you were never scared of your silence. Only the ones who needed your reaction to feel powerful were. Here's what nobody warned them about. Quiet people remember everything. Loud people forget by morning because they're too busy performing for whoever's watching. But you don't perform, you collect. Every slight, every whisper, every moment someone thought you weren't paying attention, all of it went somewhere, not into revenge, into clarity. And clarity, chosen one, is far more dangerous than anger will ever be. Anger burns out, clarity waits. And when it finally speaks, it doesn't shout. It just states the truth so plainly that nobody in the room can argue with it anymore. That's what's happening right now. That's why they're warning people. Let's go step by step through exactly how your silence became the one thing they never saw coming. Number 1, the night they realized your silence wasn't surrender. There's a moment in every one of these stories where the story turns, and for you, chosen one, it happened quietly. No fight, no confrontation, just a room going still the second your name came up, and nobody was ready to defend the things they'd said. They used to talk about you freely, carelessly, like you were a topic and not a person. They said what they wanted because they assumed silence meant you either agreed with them or you were too weak to respond. That assumption is the whole reason they're scrambling now. Here's what actually happened while they were busy talking. You were listening, not out of weakness, out of patience. You let every comment land, and instead of reacting, you filed it away. You watched who laughed. You watched who stayed quiet and let it happen. You watched who added their own version to make it worse. And you said nothing, because you already knew that anything you said in that moment would be twisted, cut short, used against you. So you waited. You let them keep talking. You let them get comfortable. You let them believe the silence meant they'd won. Imagine this, someone lighting a fire in a room they think is empty, laughing while it burns, feeling proud of the damage, and never once checking if anyone was standing in the doorway watching the whole thing. That's exactly what they did. They never checked. They never imagined you were still there, still aware, still recording every detail in a memory they assumed had already given up. And then one day, something shifted. Not loudly, quietly. Someone repeated one of their comments back to them, word for word, months later, and they froze. How did that get out? Who told them that? The truth is, chosen one, nobody had to tell anyone anything. You remembered it yourself, and when the moment came to mention it, calmly, without anger, without drama, it hit harder than any argument ever could have. That's the night they realized, not because you screamed, not because you exposed them publicly, because you proved, in one calm sentence, that you had been paying attention the entire time. And people who thought they were speaking into silence suddenly understood they'd been speaking into a record. Every joke, every dig, every moment they thought didn't count because you didn't react. It all counted. It was all still there, waiting. You might wonder why it felt so satisfying to watch their faces change in that moment. It's simple. For the first time, they weren't in control of the story. You were. And they had no idea how long you'd been holding the pen. That's the part they can't undo now. They can apologize. They can backtrack. They can pretend they were joking the whole time. But the fear is already planted. Because now they know something they didn't know before. Your silence was never empty. It was a room full of receipts, and the door just opened. Number 2. Why they mistook your quiet for surrender. Let's be honest about why they got so bold in the first place. It wasn't confidence. It was a bad assumption. They looked at your silence and decided it meant one thing. You had nothing to fight back with. No comeback. No proof. No support. So they treated you like an easy target, someone they could talk about, joke about, twist the story around, because who was going to stop them? You weren't saying anything. That silence, to them, read like defeat. But here's what they never bothered to ask. What if silence isn't the absence of a response? What if it's the deliberate choice not to give one, Yet, loud people can't imagine that kind of restraint because they've never had it themselves. They think power has to be announced. They think strength has to be performed. So when they saw you stay quiet through comment after comment, insult after insult, they read it as weakness because that's the only language they know. Picture this: two people standing across from each other, one throwing punches into the air, exhausted, sweating, out of breath. The other standing perfectly still, arms at their sides, not moving, not flinching. From a distance, it might look like the still one is losing. Up close, you realize the still one was never in the fight. They were just waiting for the other person to run out of energy. That's what happened here. They spent so much energy trying to provoke a reaction out of you. Comments designed to sting, rumors designed to isolate, little digs meant to make you snap in front of everyone so they'd have their proof that you were exactly what they said you were. And every single time, you gave them nothing. Not because you didn't feel it, you felt every word. But you understood something they didn't. Reacting on their timeline meant playing their game, and their game only works if you lose control. So you didn't. And that absence, that refusal to give them the moment they were fishing for, that's what confused them the most. They kept waiting for the explosion that never came. They kept waiting for you to beg, to explain, to defend. Instead, you just kept living your life like their noise wasn't loud enough to interrupt it. And, chosen one, nothing unsettles a person chasing a reaction more than watching their target simply refuse to perform for them. Now look at where that misread has landed them. They spent so much time convinced you were harmless that they never prepared for what happens when someone patient finally decides enough time has passed. They built their whole approach on a guess, and the guess was wrong. That's not your failure to correct. That's their math error, and they're the ones who have to live with what it cost them. Number 3, the room that goes cold when your name comes up. There's a specific kind of silence that happens now when someone mentions you, and it's different from the silence before. The silence before was smug. People smiled when they brought you up, like your name was a joke everyone was in on. Now the silence is careful. You can feel the shift even second-hand, through people who tell you how strange it was, how nobody wanted to be the one to say something first. Think about what that actually means. A room full of people who used to talk over each other to get their opinion of you in first, and now they're all waiting to see who speaks before they commit to a position. That's not respect showing up out of nowhere. That's fear wearing a very quiet mask. Nobody wants to be the one caught saying the wrong thing about you now, because they've watched what happened to the last few people who did. Imagine this: a group of people standing near a cliff edge, joking around, throwing rocks off the side, just to hear them hit the bottom, until someone realizes the ground beneath their own feet has started to crack. Suddenly, nobody's throwing anything. Everybody's checking their footing. That's the room now when your name comes up. They're not worried about you anymore. They're worried about themselves, about what they said, about who might repeat it, about what it costs them if it gets connected back to their name too. You didn't demand this shift. You didn't send a message telling people to watch their mouths. You didn't need to. The consequences did the talking for you, one quiet correction at a time, one calm sentence at a time, until word got around on its own that bringing up your name carelessly wasn't the free entertainment it used to be. And here's the part that really gets under their skin. You're not even in the room half the time this happens. You don't have to be. Your reputation is doing work you never had to lift a finger for, because for once, the truth about how you actually carry yourself outran every lie they spent months building. People remember calm longer than they remember chaos. People remember the person who never lost their composure longer than they remember whoever was loudest in the room. So now, when your name surfaces, there's a pause, a small one. just long enough for everyone to recalculate what they're about to say next. That pause is new. That pause didn't exist a year ago. And chosen one, that pause is the sound of people finally understanding that the story they told themselves about you was never the whole story at all. Number 4. The warning spreading faster than they can control it. Here's something they didn't plan for. Warnings travel faster than gossip ever did, because gossip is entertainment and warnings are self-preservation. People will forget a juicy rumor in a week, but tell someone, be careful what you say around them, and that sticks. That gets repeated. That gets passed along to the next person who's about to make the same mistake everyone before them made. So somewhere along the way, without you saying a single word about it, a version of your name started circulating that had nothing to do with the story they built. Not the version where you're the punchline, the version where you're the person people quietly tell each other not to underestimate. That version doesn't spread through announcements. It spreads through whispered advice between people who learned the hard way and don't want their friends learning it the same painful path. Picture this. Someone new joins the circle, doesn't know the history, starts to make an offhand comment about you the way they used to be made freely months ago. And before they can finish the sentence, someone pulls them aside. You don't want to do that, trust me. No explanation needed beyond that. The warning does its job without a single detail attached, because the people passing it along already learned what happens when the warning gets ignored. That's not something you built with a campaign. That's something that built itself, quietly, one uncomfortable outcome at a time, until the pattern became too obvious to dismiss. They tested you, it went badly for them. Someone else tested you, same result. Eventually the math becomes impossible to ignore, and the warning becomes common knowledge before you've even said anything about it yourself. Here's the part that should make them nervous instead of comfortable. A warning that spreads on its own, without you promoting it, without you defending yourself publicly, without you doing anything except living your life, is worth more than any accusation you could have made. People believe patterns. They don't always believe stories. And the pattern now says one thing clearly: don't test this person, because testing them doesn't end the way you think it will. You didn't ask to become a cautionary tale. You just refused to be a punchline anymore. And somewhere between those two things, the story wrote itself into something they never expected. Now every new person who hears your name also hears the warning attached to it, whether you're in the room or not, whether you asked for it or not. And chosen one, that's not luck. That's consequence. Finally catching up to a pattern they thought would never come back around. Number 5. What looked like weakness was actually preparation. They loved calling it weakness. Your quiet, your calm, your refusal to escalate. They held it up like proof that you didn't have anything real to bring to the table. What they never considered is that preparation and weakness look identical from the outside, right up until the moment they stop looking identical at all. Think about what you were actually doing during all those months they call you passive. You were watching how people behaved when they thought nobody was paying attention. You were noticing who apologized in private, but stayed silent in public. You were learning exactly who could be trusted with something real, and who only showed up when there was drama to feed on. None of that looked like anything from the outside. It looked like nothing was happening. But something was always happening. Imagine this. A person sitting quietly at a table while everyone around them assumes they're distracted, scrolling through their phone, not paying attention to the conversation. Then a question gets asked, and they answer with a detail nobody expected them to catch. A detail from 20 minutes earlier that everyone else had already forgotten. That's what preparation looks like when it's disguised as disinterest. Nobody clocks it until it's too late to undo what they already said in front of you. That's exactly what happened here. While they were busy assuming your silence meant you weren't tracking anything, you were tracking everything. Every contradiction, every person who claimed neutrality while quietly taking sides, every story that changed slightly depending on who was listening. You didn't need to write any of it down. You just needed to remember, and remembering is a skill they never respected until it started working against them. Here's the uncomfortable truth for everyone who called you weak this whole time. Weakness doesn't wait. Weakness reacts immediately because it can't stand the discomfort of staying quiet a moment longer. What you did was the opposite. You sat in discomfort on purpose. You let things sting without responding because you understood that responding too early would only give them ammunition to work with. That's not weakness, that's control, and control is a much scarier thing to be on the receiving end of than any outburst could ever be. So now, when the truth starts surfacing, when the details start lining up exactly the way you remember them, they're left wondering how you knew so much, how you tracked so precisely, how nothing seemed to slip past you even when you looked like you weren't paying attention at all. And the answer is simple, chosen one. You were never unprepared. You were just quiet about it. Number 6. The universe was counting every word they said about you. Call it karma, call it timing, call it whatever feels true to you. But there's a pattern that shows up again and again in stories like this one, and it's this. The people who talk the most carelessly about someone else are usually the ones who forget that words don't just disappear once they're said. They live somewhere, they get remembered by someone, and eventually they get repeated back at the exact moment it costs the most. You didn't need to keep score for this to work in your favor. The people around you did that job without realizing it. Every time someone said something about you that didn't sit right, somebody else noticed. Maybe they didn't say anything in the moment. Maybe they just filed it away quietly, uncomfortable but unwilling to make a scene. And over time, all those small, uncomfortable memories added up into something nobody could unsee once it started getting pointed out. Imagine this, a jar sitting quietly on a shelf, and every time someone says something careless about you, a small stone drops into it without anyone noticing. Nobody's counting, nobody's paying attention to the sound. Until one day the jar is full, and it tips over, and every stone that's been dropping in silently for months comes spilling out all at once in front of everyone. That's what's happening now. Nobody planned that moment. It just built up, quietly, the way these things always do, until there was nowhere left for it to hide. Here's what makes this land so hard for the people who were careless with your name. They assumed there would never be a reckoning because nothing seemed to happen right away. They mistook the delay for permission. But delay isn't permission. Delay is just timing that hasn't arrived yet. And when it finally does arrive, it tends to land heavier precisely because it took so long to show up. Because by then, there's more evidence, more witnesses, more patterns to point to than there ever would have been if the truth had come out immediately. You didn't orchestrate any of this. You didn't need to. You just kept being consistent while they kept being careless. And consistency has a way of outlasting carelessness every single time. Now, when people ask how it all came out the way it did, the honest answer is almost boring in how simple it is. Nobody protected you specially. Nobody intervened dramatically. The truth just had time to catch up, and once it did, it didn't need any help finishing the job. Number 7. Why nobody tests you the way they used to. There used to be a rhythm to how people treated you. Small jabs to see how far they could push. Little comments dressed up as jokes to test the water. Every time you didn't react, they'd push a little further, assuming the lack of response meant the door was open for more. That rhythm doesn't exist anymore, and if you've noticed the shift, you're not imagining it. Something changed the moment they realized silence wasn't an open door. It was a closed one they mistook for an open one. Once a few of those tests landed badly for the people running them, Word got around fast that testing you doesn't play out the way it used to. Maybe it was a comment that came back around at the worst possible time for the person who made it. Maybe it was a situation where staying calm made someone else look unhinged by comparison. Whatever the specific moment was, it taught a lesson that spread quietly through everyone paying attention. Picture this: a kid poking at something in the grass with a stick, assuming it's harmless because it hasn't moved yet, until it finally does. And every other kid nearby suddenly keeps their distance without needing to be told why. That's the exact energy now. Nobody's explaining the new rule out loud. They just know, somehow, that the old approach doesn't work on you anymore, and they'd rather avoid the situation altogether than find out the hard way a second time. This isn't about intimidation, chosen one, and it never was. You didn't become someone people fear because you threatened anyone. You became someone people are careful around because you proved, more than once, that pushing you doesn't get the reaction they're hoping for. It gets consequences instead. Quiet ones, calm ones, the kind that don't look dramatic in the moment but land harder over time than any shouting match ever could. That's the real shift here. They're not scared of your anger. You've never needed anger to make a point. They're scared of your composure, because composure means you're thinking clearly while they're reacting emotionally, and thinking clearly almost always wins in the long run. So the test stopped, the little jabs stopped, the casual comments stopped, not because they suddenly respected you out of nowhere, but because they finally learned, the hard way, that testing you was never the free move they thought it was. Number 8. The apology they'll never say out loud. Some apologies never get spoken. They show up instead in the way someone suddenly treats you differently, in the way they go quiet around you now instead of loud, in the way they avoid bringing up the past like it never happened at all. That's the apology you're getting right now, chosen one, even if nobody's ever said the actual words to your face. Watch how it shows up. The person who used to talk about you constantly suddenly can't seem to make eye contact anymore. The person who spread the loudest version of the story now changes the subject the second your name comes up. None of them are going to sit you down and say, "I was wrong about you." That would require accountability, and accountability is exactly what they've spent this whole time avoiding. But their behavior is saying it anyway, whether they mean for it to or not. Imagine this: a person who spent months confidently telling a story that turned out to be wrong, standing in a room full of people who now know the truth, trying to figure out how to exit the conversation without anyone bringing up what they said before. That awkward shuffle, that sudden interest in their phone, that overly polite tone they didn't used to use around you, that's the apology. It's just wearing a disguise, because saying it plainly would mean admitting they were wrong from the start. Here's the part that matters most. You don't need the spoken version. You don't need them to stand up and admit it publicly for the truth to already be settled. Their actions are doing the confessing for them, one avoided conversation at a time, one changed tone at a time, one moment of visible discomfort at a time. That's more honest than most spoken apologies anyway, because it's not performative. It's not designed to make them look good. It's just what happens naturally when someone realizes they were wrong and doesn't know how to say it without losing face. So let them keep avoiding the words. Let them keep pretending the past didn't happen the way it happened. You already have everything you need, which is the shift in how they carry themselves around you now. That shift is proof enough. Chosen one, you were never waiting for permission to know the truth. You were just watching to see how long it would take them to start acting like they know it too. Number 9. How your silence exposed the ones who stayed quiet beside them. Here's a part of this story that doesn't get talked about enough. It's not just the loud ones who get exposed when the truth finally lands. It's the quiet ones standing next to them the whole time, nodding along, laughing at the right moments, never once speaking up, who suddenly have their own reckoning to deal with. Those people always thought they were safe because they weren't the ones saying the worst of it. They just stood there while it happened. They just laughed a little too easily at jokes they knew weren't fair. They just let silence work in the wrong direction, protecting the people saying careless things instead of protecting the person those things were being said about. And for a long time, that worked out fine for them, because nobody was paying close enough attention to notice who was staying quiet on purpose. Picture this: a group of people standing around while one person says something cruel, and everyone else just watches, none of them adding to it directly, none of them stopping it either. From the outside, it looks like nothing happened, but the person on the receiving end remembers every face in that circle, remembers exactly who could have said something and chose not to. That memory doesn't fade just because nobody made a scene about it in the moment. Now that the truth is surfacing, those same quiet bystanders are realizing their silence wasn't as protective as they thought it was. Being quiet while someone gets treated unfairly isn't neutral. It's a choice, and choices eventually get remembered the same way loud actions do. So while the loudest people are dealing with the most obvious consequences, the quiet enablers are having their own quieter reckoning, watching people slowly connect the dots about who was in the room and said nothing. This isn't about revenge, chosen one. You're not out here keeping a list to settle scores with, but you notice. You've always noticed. And now that the whole situation is unfolding the way it's unfolding, the people who thought staying quiet made them innocent are learning that innocence requires more than just not being the loudest voice in the room. It requires actually standing for something when it mattered, and a lot of people are only now realizing they didn't. And to be clear, chosen one, this isn't a reason to start suspecting every quiet person around you of secretly being against you. Most people who stay quiet in a hard moment are just uncertain, not cruel. The ones who this chapter is really about are the ones who already knew better and chose comfort anyway. That distinction matters because turning this into a reason to distrust everyone who's ever hesitated would cost you more than any of them ever did. Number 10. The moment "don't mess with them" became the only rule left. Every group has unwritten rules, the kind nobody says out loud, but everyone somehow understands anyway. And at some point, without a formal announcement, without anyone deciding it on purpose, one of those unwritten rules became this: don't mess with you. Not because anyone declared it, because everyone learned it separately and it just became common knowledge. Think about how strange that actually is. Nobody sat the group down and explained the new rule. Nobody sent a memo. It just happened gradually, through small moments, through people watching what happened when someone crossed a line with you and deciding they didn't want the same outcome for themselves. Rules that spread that way tend to stick harder than rules that get announced, because nobody feels forced into following them. They just quietly agree, based on evidence, that this is how things are now. Imagine this: a new employee walking into an office and immediately picking up on small cues, who to avoid interrupting, whose desk not to touch, which conversations to stay out of, all without anyone explaining a single one of those things directly. That's exactly how this rule about you spread. Nobody had to say it plainly. People just absorbed it from watching everyone else's behavior, and now it's simply part of how the group operates without question. Here's what makes this shift so uncomfortable for the people who used to treat you carelessly. They don't get credit for learning the rule. They don't get to act like they always respected you this way. Everyone remembers exactly when the shift happened and exactly why it happened, even if nobody says it out loud. The rule exists because of specific moments, specific consequences, specific situations where someone learned the hard way that testing you costs more than it's worth. So now the rule just sits there quietly, followed by everyone, understood by everyone, and enforced without anyone needing to enforce it, because the memory of what happens when it's broken does all the enforcing on its own. Chosen one, you didn't ask for this reputation. You didn't campaign for it. You just stopped absorbing careless treatment quietly. And somewhere in that decision, an entire unwritten rulebook rewrote itself around you. Number 11. Why walking away from you now feels like walking into a trap. There's a specific kind of anxiety that shows up in people who know they've done something wrong but haven't been called out for it yet. It shows up as overthinking every interaction, replaying every conversation, wondering if this is the moment it finally comes up. That anxiety is exactly what a lot of the people who mistreated you are living with right now, and it's worse than any confrontation could have been. Here's why. If you had confronted them directly the moment it happened, they would have had a clear target for their defensiveness. They could have argued back, minimized it, made you the unreasonable one for bringing it up. But you didn't give them that opportunity. You stayed calm, stayed quiet, and let the discomfort of not knowing what you know sit with them instead. That uncertainty is far more exhausting than an actual argument would have been, because there's nothing to argue against, there's just the waiting. Imagine this. Someone who knows they left a mess somewhere, but can't remember exactly how bad it was, walking past the place where it happened every single day, wondering if today's the day someone finally notices. That low hum of dread, that constant second-guessing, that's what being around you feels like now, for the people who know they crossed a line. Every conversation with you carries a small undercurrent of, is this the moment it comes up? That's not something you're doing on purpose. You're not dangling anything over their heads. You're just living your life, calm and consistent, while they're the ones carrying the weight of not knowing what you remember, or what you'd say if you decided to. And that imbalance, chosen one, is exactly why avoiding you now feels safer to them than being around you, even though you've never once threatened them with anything. The irony is heavy here. They spent so long assuming your silence meant they were in the clear. Now that same silence is the reason they can't relax around you anymore, because silence that doesn't explain itself is far more unsettling than silence that clearly means nothing at all. You didn't set a trap, you just stopped performing for people who never deserved a performance, and their own guilt built the trap around them instead. Number 12. What they lost the day they realized you were never afraid. There's a version of you they were counting on the whole time, one that would eventually crack, apologize for existing, shrink back into whatever smaller shape made everyone else comfortable. They built their entire approach around the assumption that eventually you'd fold. That assumption is the thing they lost the day it finally became clear it was never going to happen. Think about how much of their confidence depended on that outcome. If you had reacted the way they expected, panicked, argued, tried desperately to defend yourself in public, it would have confirmed everything they said about you. It would have given them the proof they needed to keep the story going. But you never gave them that moment, and the longer it didn't come, the more their own confidence started to crack instead of yours. Picture this. Someone standing at the edge of a pool, absolutely certain the person in front of them is about to fall in, pushing gently, expecting the splash, expecting the reaction, and instead watching that person calmly step aside without even losing their footing. That confusion on their face, that brief moment of realizing the plan didn't work the way it was supposed to. That's exactly what happened here, over and over, every time they expected you to break, and you simply didn't. Here's what that cost them. Every failed attempt to shake you chipped away at the story they'd built about who you were. If you were really as fragile as they claimed, you would have folded by now. If you were really as unstable as they said, it would have shown by now. Instead, the opposite happened. You stayed exactly as steady as you'd always been, and that steadiness became its own kind of evidence, quiet but impossible to argue with. So now they're left holding a story that doesn't match reality anymore, trying to figure out how to walk it back without admitting they were wrong from the beginning. And chosen one, that's a much harder position to be in than the one they thought they were putting you in. You never had to defend yourself loudly. You just had to keep being exactly who you already were. And eventually, the gap between their story and the truth became too obvious for anyone to keep ignoring. Number 13, the final warning. Some silence isn't empty, it's loaded. There's a difference between someone who has nothing to say and someone who has everything to say and is choosing not to say it yet. From the outside, both of those things can look identical. Quiet is quiet. But the people who eventually find out the difference the hard way never forget the lesson. And right now, that lesson is spreading through everyone who's paid close enough attention to your story. Silence that comes from having nothing tends to stay that way. It never surprises anyone. It never shifts a room. But silence that comes from restraint, from choosing patience over reaction, from deciding the timing wasn't right yet, that kind of silence eventually does something. It lands. It corrects the record. It shifts the entire understanding of what actually happened, usually all at once, after everyone assumed nothing was ever coming. Imagine this, a held breath before a wave crashes, that brief pause where everything looks calm on the surface, while an enormous amount of pressure is building just beneath it. Anyone standing close enough, who's paid attention before, knows exactly what that pause means. Everyone else just sees stillness and assumes nothing is happening at all. That's the warning being passed around about you right now, quietly, between people who've learned to recognize the difference. Here's why that warning matters so much to the people it's aimed at. They've spent this entire time treating your quiet like an invitation, like proof there's nothing behind it worth worrying about. But every person who's tested that theory has walked away with a very different understanding. And that understanding is exactly what's being passed on now to anyone new who might be tempted to make the same mistake. Don't confuse their patience for permission. Don't confuse their calm for weakness. That's the whole warning, distilled into one sentence, repeated quietly by people who learned it the hard way. You didn't have to write that warning yourself, chosen one. You didn't have to defend your own reputation or explain your own restraint. The outcomes did that work for you, one situation at a time, until the pattern became too consistent to explain away as coincidence. Some silence really is loaded. And now, finally, the people who needed to understand that difference finally do. Number 14. Why this isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of theirs paying for it. Here's where a lot of these stories usually end, with the big reveal, the moment everyone finally sees the truth, the satisfying shift where the story flips in your favor. But chosen one, that moment isn't the ending here. It's just the beginning of a much longer, much quieter reckoning that they set in motion themselves and now have to live inside of. Think about what actually changes once the truth is out and understood by the people who matter. It's not a single dramatic event. It's every future interaction, every room they walk into where your name might come up, every new person who eventually hears the accurate version of the story instead of the one they spent so much energy building. That's not a moment. That's a permanent shift in how they move through the world, and it doesn't require a single additional word from you to keep happening. Imagine this, a stone dropped into water long after the person who dropped it has walked away, the ripples still spreading outward, still reaching new edges of the pond, long after the original moment is forgotten by everyone except the water itself. That's what's happening here. You've moved on. You're living your life. But the consequences of what they did are still spreading, quietly, into every corner of their reputation that used to feel untouchable. Here's the part that should sit with them the longest. This isn't punishment you designed. This isn't revenge you orchestrated. This is simply what happens when careless behavior finally meets consistent truth. They built a story on the assumption that you would never correct it, that your silence would last forever, that nobody would ever connect the details the way they eventually got connected. That assumption is the thing costing them now, every single day, in ways far more lasting than any single confrontation ever could have. And you, chosen one, you get to walk forward from here without needing to look back at any of it. You don't need their apology. You don't need their acknowledgement. You already have the only thing that ever actually mattered, which is the truth, sitting exactly where it belongs, finally understood by the people who needed to understand it. Their story is just getting started, and it's not the story they wanted. Yours already finished the chapter that mattered, quietly, the way the best ones always do. And maybe that's the real lesson underneath everything we've talked about tonight. You were never trying to win a fight. You were just trying to stay yourself, while everyone around you tried to talk you into becoming someone smaller. The fact that they're the ones dealing with the fallout now isn't the point. The point is, you never had to become someone else to get here. Number 15. Why they're studying your silence like it's a language they need to learn. Here's the strangest twist in all of this, chosen one. It's not just that they've stopped testing you. It's that some of them have started copying you. Watch closely, and you'll see it. The same people who used to fill every room with noise are suddenly a little quieter around conflict now. The same people who used to react to everything instantly are suddenly pausing before they respond. That's not a coincidence. That's them trying to reverse engineer whatever it is you were doing this whole time, because they watched it work, and they don't understand why. Think about how uncomfortable that has to be for them. They spent so long mocking your restraint, calling it strange, calling it cold, calling it whatever word made them feel better about not having any of it themselves. And now, quietly, without ever admitting it out loud, they're trying to borrow a piece of it. They're trying to hold their tongue in situations where the old version of them would have exploded. They're trying to wait a beat before reacting the way you always did. And it's not landing the same way for them, because it's not natural. It's imitation, and imitation always looks a little forced next to the real thing. Imagine this. Someone watching a musician play a piece from memory, effortless, unhurried, every note landing exactly where it should, and then trying to copy it themselves note for note, only to realize the hard part was never the notes. It was the years of practice nobody saw happen before the performance. That's what they're running into right now. They can copy the pause. They can copy the calm expression. What they can't copy is the discipline underneath it. The discipline built from actually surviving what you survived and choosing not to let it turn you into noise. Here's what makes this so satisfying to watch from where you're standing. They used to think your silence was something you fell into because you had no other option. Now they're finding out it's something you have to build, on purpose, over time, through every moment you could have reacted and chose not to. That's not a switch anyone can flip overnight just because they finally respect the outcome. It's a muscle, and muscles only grow the way yours did, slowly, under pressure, without applause. So let them study you. Let them try to imitate the stillness they used to make fun of. Every time they try, and it doesn't quite land the same way, it proves the point all over again. What you built wasn't a trick. It wasn't a performance you could teach in an afternoon. It was a version of yourself, forged specifically by everything they put you through, and chosen one. That's not something they get to borrow just because they finally understand its value. So here's where we land, chosen one. Not with noise, not with a dramatic confrontation, just with the quiet, steady understanding that your silence was never the empty thing they said it was. It was patience, it was memory, it was restraint, doing exactly what restraint is supposed to do, waiting for the moment when speaking, or not speaking, would matter the most. They called it weakness because that's the only language they had for something they couldn't understand. But you already know the truth, and now, slowly, so does everyone else. The rooms have gotten quieter around your name. The warnings have started spreading on their own. The people who once tested you without a second thought now think twice before they say anything careless in your direction. None of that happened because you demanded it. It happened because consequences eventually catch up to carelessness, every single time, whether it takes a week or takes a year. If this message found you tonight, chosen one, it found you for a reason. Maybe you're in the middle of your own version of this story right now, wondering if staying quiet is actually working, wondering if the patience is worth it. It is. It always is. Keep being consistent. Keep letting your actions do the correcting instead of your words. The truth doesn't need you to defend it loudly. It just needs time, and you've already given it plenty of that. Drop a 77 in the comments if you feel this one in your chest, if you know exactly what it feels like to be underestimated and stay quiet anyway. Let every other chosen one scrolling past this video know the shift is real, and it's already happening for them too, even if they can't see it yet. And if this message meant something to you tonight, consider sending a super thanks through the button on your screen. It keeps these messages reaching the people who need to hear them most, right when they need to hear them. Before you go, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this with someone who's been staying quiet and needs to know their silence isn't weakness either. It's the same weapon yours turned out to be. And one more thing before we close this out. Somewhere out there tonight, someone is sitting in the exact position you used to sit in, wondering if staying quiet actually means anything, wondering if anyone is even noticing the restraint it takes not to react. Tell them, if you can, that it counts. Tell them the room does eventually go quiet. Tell them the warnings do eventually spread. Tell them the truth really does have its own timing, and it is never actually late, even when it feels that way in the middle of it. You didn't believe that either, once, and here you are. Thanks for watching, chosen one. We'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care, and goodbye.